Good morning and welcome back to our Ask the Agronomist Facebook Live. We are here today with Phil once again. How are you doing, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good. Standing in the back of the pickup truck this morning.
Yes we are. We've got some nice weather this week.
Oh yeah, it's been beautiful.
Aside from the storms.
Aside from the rain, it has been really nice, kind of a preparation for fall kind of weather, getting me excited for that time.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's been nice. So today we're going to be talking about two common soybean diseases, sudden death syndrome and brown stem rot, and kind of the identification between both of them to begin with.
Yeah, so brown stem rot and sudden death syndrome are two very similar and very common diseases that show up, especially in a year like this year. You know, we've had, at the start of the planting season, we had cooler, wetter, conditions in a lot of places, and now we're still seeing cooler, wetter conditions around that flowering and after flowering into seed and pod fill and so forth. So those conditions are ideal for this disease to show up, and it's starting to show up pretty well in the northern part of Minnesota, northern Iowa, Wisconsin. We're hearing reports kind of all over with SDS and brown stem rot showing up. But the key between the two is knowing the difference, because they're two very different fungal diseases, and you got to know which one you have in order to do the things to avoid them, whether that's picking resistant varieties or treating seed and that kind of thing. So I grabbed a few examples. Just a little bit of yellow starting that interveinal chlorosis, and then it turns to more of this, where you can see it looks like a plant is either maturing or something's wrong. And then that's the case. So this one has SDS and it's got that interveinal chlorosis. And then the last stage that a lot of people see, that you can kind of, this is one distinguishing factor between brown stem rot and sudden death, is this look right here. And what happens is the leaves fall off the petioles. And brown stem rot, a lot of times you don't see that. Sometimes you do though. So this is to me it's confusing above ground to try and distinguish them. It's about impossible. So you really got to split the stems. But these are some examples of sudden death and kind of the progression that the disease makes above ground.
Okay, so splitting the stem, now what?
Branch comes off, you'll see brown starting there and then working its way down and up and so forth. But it'll be right in that center part of that stem, and it'll start to, once it progresses more, it'll skeletalize that center part. It'll look very like a skeleton in the middle there. So it gets brown, then it skeletalizes. Sudden death syndrome, however, you want to make sure you're focusing on the bottom part of the plant, because obviously both of these are soil borne. They're in the soil. They're going to be coming from the roots. So this is the lower part of the stem, you can tell. And SDS, you want to look at the other part, the cortex tissue, so on the outside of the pith. So these two parts here, and you can see, it'll have discoloration, browning, things like that, versus a healthy stem, which is usually still white, or have a tinge of green in this case, but it's a really white, healthy tissue color. So those two diagnostic features are the two main symptoms you want to look for. Split the stem, and if it's on the very center, showing up later, you'll probably still have some beans, but they're going to end up being smaller.
Right.
If it shows up earlier, before the beans really start to fill those pods out, then you may have, total loss as far as yield, and maybe 100% yield loss. Those plants may stop growing. They won't be getting water. They won't be pushing nutrients to the pods. So essentially you'll have, zero yield on those plants that are infected that early on.
So let's talk about resistant varieties or different treatments that can help combat this.
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to SDS, a lot of times we talk about compaction. See it in driveways and stuff in the fields. So compaction's a big one.
Right.
I said tillage won't help, won't take care of, get rid of the disease. But tillage will help reduce compaction, and compaction, in terms of the roots and infection, will help with sudden death syndrome. May not be sudden death syndrome. It may be brown stem rot. So that's important to note too. The other thing is the interaction that it has with soybean cyst nematode.
Right.
Those two have a heavy interaction, and brown stem rot. A lot of times you'll see brown stem rot with sudden death syndrome and soybean cyst nematode. So if you've never tested for soybean cyst nematode, that would also be a good thing to test for, to see how many nematodes are out there, or get an egg count to see what's out in the soil, because all those three things kind of have an interaction. It's not well understood, but they all kind of interact, and a lot of times you can pick plants out in the field and may see sudden death, and you may also see some brown stem rot.